Hello, this is Let's Talk About Myths, baby, and I am your host, Liv. Here, recording this introduction on my awkward, shitty Apple microphone, so I'm sorry if it sounds weird, but here we are. It's what I've got. And what you all don't need to know, but I'm going to tell you anyways, that Jenny Williamson is in my house overhearing the recording of this introduction. And today's episode is with none other than Peta Greenfield of The Partial Historians. And when I tell you that today's episode is like distinctly unhinged, I am not exaggerating. Peta joined me to talk about the Vestal virgins of ancient Rome, which are these priestesses to Vesta, ostensibly being the Roman form of Hestia, which in this case, I love to remind you all that the Romans didn't just copy the Greek gods, but Hestia and Vesta are so fascinatingly similar while also having the practices surrounding them being distinctly different, because Rome is, you guys, the Roman Empire, I don't know if I've told you this before, but they were horrifying. And the horror that is the Roman Empire, I think, is just so crisp today in ways that it never has been before. And so here, listen to the wonderful Peta tell me about the horrific things that the Romans did to the Vestal virgins. Spoilers, there's burying alive. Being a woman has been cool and normal and totally safe and fair and equitable forever, for sure, definitely. This episode, this is an unhinged introduction. I think we all saw what happened last weekend. Sometimes when you really want something bad enough, it happens for you. And maybe it doesn't look like what you thought. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. This episode is both horrifying and absolutely so interesting and entertaining and full of my utter bafflement at the horrors. And yet, I know you're going to love it. So sit back and at least appreciate the lovely Australian accent telling you about all the horrors. It makes it better, I promise. Conversations. Joining the Vestal Virgins sounds nice until you realize you might get buried alive with Dr. Peta Greenfield.
I think maybe you should tell me what you know about Vestal virgins, and then I can calibrate what I tell you in return about them.
I mean, I really I can safely say I know like almost nothing. I know that I know that they're virgins. So like unmarried in whatever way Rome conceptualized virginity. I'm less familiar with that too, even. And even I was thinking about this earlier actually, because I was trying to decide like, how I'm going to start this conversation when I literally know nothing, which it's now a running joke on the show that like, if I need to learn about Rome, I would prefer to have someone like yourself. It's often you guys, let's be honest, come on the show and tell me about Rome, because there's just something about Rome. Like it just doesn't get my interest in the way of like me finding it out on my own. So I'm thrilled that I get to like have people come teach me about Rome. But even Vesta is so different. Like people love to say, Vesta is the Roman name for Hestia, but I know enough to know that she's so different even from Hestia, who's like even in the Greek mythology, Hestia is this very like amorphous, unique kind of figure. So basically, do you want to start by telling me about Vesta?
Definitely. Okay.
Great.
Vesta. Vesta is one of the 12 important Roman goddesses, gods and goddesses, but she's often left
now I'm really already throwing it off. Do they call? I was going to say you guys, as if you're an ancient Roman.
Hello.
This is when I recorded 6 p.m. This is when my brain like shuts down.
You ancient Romans.
Do you guys also call them Olympians? Is what I was going to ask.
Oh,
but
definitely not.
They call they still have the 12,
mm-hmm.
and I know, and I mean, also to make very clear, I'm at a point in my knowledge of mythology where I'm not going to pretend like they are the same gods. But I do know that there are 12 and they have all these links to Greek gods. So it's interesting to me that there are 12 and there are all these connections. But did they have like a name kind of equivalent to the Olympians?
No, not really. They're kind of referred to generally as the pantheon, but obviously that sort of also encompasses everything.
Yeah.
So this idea that there are 12 is kind of this way of connecting to the Greeks. But, and I believe this is the same for Hestia, sometimes Vesta falls off that list.
Yes.
Depending on who's talking about them, what they feel like might be most important. And for Vesta, this is partly because we have so little physical evidence for her as a goddess. Unlike other Roman gods and goddesses, she is not depicted iconographically. She doesn't have statues. So
I'm into it.
No statues. We'll have none of that around here. The way that she is represented and embodied in Roman life is the fire itself. That's the only way she's supposed to be depicted. And because of that, we don't have lots of physical evidence that remains. So when people talk about who are the important Roman gods, immediately we're looking at the archaeological evidence and being like, well, Vesta doesn't seem to stack up. Where are the depictions? We do get depictions of Vestals, though. So that's nice. We do see them coming through in reliefs. And also, as we get it further into the imperial period, we do get sculptures of actual Vestals, which is something that is a late trend for them. So that's really interesting, I think, that we don't know much about Vesta as an embodied physical presence in Rome. She has the flame. The flame is centered in the temple, which strictly speaking is not a temple according to Roman standards because it's not built on consecrated ground. It is called an Ades, so a sacred area. But that is a suggestion that Vesta and the worship of Vesta is so old that it predates those kinds of ritual practices. So everything about this is everything about this is suggesting the antiquity of Vesta.
Yeah.
So my understanding...
sorry, but I love this, and I'm just going to, connect it to my world of mythology, but like, or of Greek mythology, because Hestia is all of those things. And again, to the listeners, I want to go into more detail about this, but like the idea of the Roman gods being just the copies of the Greek is definitely not accurate, but all of that is so true for Hestia too. So I just find that so interesting, and also gives this idea that like they were both like predating so many things, which is, people ask me about Hestia all the time, and I always have to say, like, the way I describe her is that she was so important on a day-to-day life basis that she was not included in stuff that then ends up typically surviving to make it seem like that she was an important Olympian. And it's the same where she sometimes, like, I like to say there are 12 Olympians, but also actually 14. But like the number 12 is what matters, but also there were really 14. And so it's, that is so applies to her too, where she's sometimes included, sometimes not. There's no stories about her. There's not really any depictions I can think of, except for this idea that, the hearth was hers and sacred. And at least in the Greek imagination, her sacred hearth was in everyone's homes, also the temples, but like, in everyone's homes was like where Hestia's sacred hearth is. So it's just interesting that the Romans simultaneously had such similar, and then also have this entire world of the Vestals, which is so different, so non-existent in the Greek world.
Yeah, and I think this comparison with Hestia being the hearthfire that sits in everybody's home is a parallel that we see with Vesta as well. And it strikes me that this is partly a relationship of material culture. Like, we don't know enough about textiles in the ancient world, which means that we don't know a lot about women's work. In the same way, how do we source and figure out where the hearthfire is in every single domus? And it was there, it had to be, because how else are you going to cook your food? And it's a very important part of everyday life. So every house has one. And that means that Vesta is present in every household. And the way that you look after your hearth fire is part of the way that you venerate Vesta. And then at the state level, the way that Vesta's fire in the A-Days Vestae is looked after, that represents the whole health and safety of the entire state of Rome. So every city has its own embodiment of Vesta. It's not unique to Rome, but what Rome ends up doing with it, with its priesthood around it, seems to be quite unique. And I think that's what really starts to fascinate people, be like, where did these ritual practices come from, and how did they decide to do it this way in particular? And my understanding about Hestia, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, is that she tended to be served at a state level by women who were postmenopausal.
I actually don't know. I don't know what the problem is. I know all the stories, the the mythological sources, but I need to find somebody to tell me more about Hestia from that, because I don't know, and I like that idea. But
yeah,
I
it's
don't
really
know
interesting to me that it
Yeah.
might be sitting at the opposite end of the spectrum. It's like
Yeah.
there's a youthful virginity associated with Vestals who are serving in Rome, and that seems to be quite different from the way that Hestia is understood to be served in a Greek context.
Yeah.
But
Well,
even
and Hestia is regularly called as like a virgin, but there isn't really like, it's just that she's never married. There's not that youthful nature. It's just that this way that like the Greeks were like, oh, if it's a lady who doesn't have any kids and she never married, then surely she's a virgin, And so it's interesting to have that more like actual youthful connotation in Rome.
definitely, and Vesta appears in stories where she does get pursued by figures like Priapus completely inappropriately, and she's like, get away from me. I'm a virgin. I want nothing to do with this.
I mean,
So
he's terrifying no matter what.
he is. He's everywhere as well. Like, you only have to wander in a garden for a certain amount of time and there will be a statue of Priapus, and you're like, oh, okay then. So for anybody who's not aware of Priapus, he is a minor god that is understood to depict immoderate desire, which means he is always depicted with an oversized erect phallus. Not the kind of creature you want to encounter.
I'm assuming it's from Pompeii because it's a painting I can picture, the one where it's on a scale. Yeah, so I just need to, everyone, if you're curious about this god, just Google Priapus and maybe the scale. Either way, you're going to find the one I'm talking about, because it is, I want to say iconic, but it's also more disturbing than it is anything else.
Imagine that your erect phallus was so large that it could be weighed on a scale against some other good.
And he's like standing there in this way that it's just so, it's the most bizarre
yeah, he's
piece
like,
that
check it out.
Truly.
Like, terrible. Yeah, so Vesta doesn't want anything to do with that, and rightly so. But there are stories that are sort of told which indicate that other gods are maybe not so precious about her virginity as she is. And so she's always looking to protect it for herself. Quite rightly so. And as a flow-on consequence of this, the priestesses who serve her are also required to be virginal in nature in order to reflect her physicality and the way that she presents as a goddess. So this leads down really interesting paths, because how do you know that somebody is a virgin in the ancient world? And we know that virginity is a social construct, so that's the whole thing's a problem.
Yeah, that was my question, is like, do we know how they conceptualized the notion of it?
Yeah,
like yeah,
we do.
Getting too weird, but
if it was penetration, it's not virginity.
Right.
That's their basic line of thinking. So definitely for women, virginity is definitely related to how they're interacting physically with men. And as far as the Romans are concerned, you can have a look at a lady's downstairs and you can make a determination about her virginity or lack thereof with a simple visual inspection.
Oh, great.
Fantastic. Great. Yeah. So the Romans, for them, it was pretty simple. It's a problem for everybody else, including Vestals in the ancient world. But there you have it.
That's so okay. Yeah. Delightful. The virginity part is just always, and I don't know enough about the Greeks. I just know like also the word just really meant unmarried too. So it's like this really bizarre kind of, question about like what it really was meant to mean. And it's so hard to get beyond the like nasty, more modern Christian ideas. But so yeah, I mean, what was the role of these? How young were they? Like, what did they do? I don't know. I mean, you have everything to tell me about, but I'm trying to guide us.
Yeah. Okay, so to become a Vestal, there is a real particular process for that. First of all, there's the age. To be selected, you have to be between the ages of 6 and 10.
Whoa! Oh, wow! They're really young.
Super young. How can you be sure that you have a virgin in the role? You have to select them before they could possibly be betrothed to anyone. And for elite Roman families, you could betroth a girl as young as 12.
Ugh. Okay.
So you want
Delightful.
to, yeah, horrible. So that's the first criteria. They're selected really young. So they're prepubescent. And this is all part of ensuring that that virginity is in place. Then it's a matter of, are they the right kind of candidate for the job? So they have to have no blemish on their body. They must not have a speech impediment. They must not have a hearing impediment. This is all important so that they can perform the rituals appropriately, because everything about the relationship with the gods is predicated on being able to perform the prayers correctly. So if you're not able to do that, there's no point joining. Don't ruin it for everybody else with your speech impediment. And both your parents have to be alive, and neither of them can have a history of slavery. So they must not have ever been enslaved.
Right.
Basically,
not owning them, that's fine. It's
owning them is
enslaved.
fine.
Okay,
in fact, it's probably great if you do own them, because that probably means that you're in the elite class. And for the longest period of time in Rome's history, Vestals are only drawn from the most elite families, which tend to be called patricians, but we don't really know what patricians are.
Okay. I know that word, so
they're the fancy pants people. They tend to fill most of the religious positions, which are obviously positions of influence and power at a ritual and sacred level, determining what the relationship with the gods will be and how that's going. And the Vestals fall into that category as well. So at any point in time, there will be 6 Vestal virgins. That's the appropriate number that gets landed on eventually. Some of the early stories suggest that there was just 1 to start with, maybe 2, but the numbers increase and the college becomes 6. They fall under the jurisdiction of the Pontifex Maximus, who is the chief priest in many respects in Rome. And he is the one who selects them. So that's kind of an interesting process as well, because it's not just you have to have your unblemished body and your parents have to be the right kind of people, but there's also a ritual that is called capture.
Okay.
Yeah. So they get captured from their family by the Pontifex Maximus in a ritual process, which severs some of their legal ties to their family, but also creates a different legal position for them in relation to the rest of the Roman state. So they are the only people that are cut off from their family in a very specific way. And it's not that they can't have contact with their family after that, but they're not legally obligated to their family in the way that other Roman daughters were. So that's an interesting sort of moment of freedom for these women. It means that they can own their own property. Oh. They can do business without having a legal guardian. So Roman women in general needed to have a male with them at all times to conduct business, because women, goodness knows, not capable of making
minds. We could never.
Yeah, well, you just don't know how it's going to go if you send a woman by herself. Who knows? Who knows? Better have a man there just in case. So women fought against that quite substantially, and those rules do change over time in Rome as we get into more of the imperial period. But for a long time, Vestals are the only women who are allowed to conduct their own business.
Okay, so if they're so young, like how long are they Vestals? Like when they have time, I guess, and then also, yeah, okay. There's too many questions before one is answered. Like, how long are they Vestals for? Is it like a life sentence? Is what I was gonna say.
Are they forever a Vestal? Once a Vestal, forever a Vestal? Pretty much. So the minimum tenure is 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah, minimum.
Okay, so it matters then they can conduct their own business because they're selected that young, but they're growing up quick and then they live a somewhat free life, but also are clearly tied to
A somewhat
Vesta.
restricted life, a really,
Yeah.
really particular life. So yeah, they grow up. So the youngest age that you could leave the order would be 36. We don't actually have any evidence that women who became Vestals did leave.
Okay.
There's the suggestion and possibility that they could, but we
Okay.
don't have any good evidence to suggest that anybody did. And
It's nice to know that they probably could.
hmm,
I mean, I guess if we have no evidence, it's also like, but could they really?
but yeah, but did they?
Yeah.
And the sense we get is that a lot of them become very used to the lifestyle. And it's kind of like, well, how would I fit back into regular Roman society when I do have these advantages that I've had all of my life? Yes, there are high levels of restriction, but there's also things that I can do which I would not be able to do if I left.
Yeah.
So most stay, as far as we're aware.
I mean, I'm sure all of this is there's too many questions. This is so interesting. Mostly because I know nothing about like the Greek side at all, because I mean, I also think that the Greek evidence is harder to piece apart, like the level of detail that you clearly have with these. So now I'm just obsessed. But so what were they doing? Like how limited was their life? Like, and also that makes so much sense that if you spend 30 years living that kind of life, like I can't fathom, like I've spent 36 years without a man, and let me tell you, I'm not going to start getting one now, because like what the hell's the point? And so yeah, like that's so interesting, but what were their lives like?
Okay, so
Sorry, I'm just like I'm
No.
throwing everything at you, but
it's a great question. I'm just thinking about where to start.
yeah.
So the thing that is most important is their caretaking of the flame of Vesta.
Right.
That is paramount. So I assume, and we don't know this, but because there's 6 of them, I assume that there's some kind of rotation across the day and people do shifts. At least one person has to be in that temple looking at that fire at any time, day, night, regardless. Because if that fire goes out, it's a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
And we can get into why that's a huge problem later.
I would like that. Thank you.
We'll put a pin in that. So they've always got to be watching the fire. The other things that they need to do every day are cleansing the temple. So things build up over time. You get ritual impurities. So one of the tasks is to go to a nearby fountain, collect some water, bring it back, cleanse the space. That happens on a daily basis. It's considered on an annual cycle to not be quite enough. There is a huge annual ritual cleanup as well, which happens in June. They have the Vestalia, which is a very exciting time, and people who aren't Vestals are actually allowed into the temple space. But because of that, the ritual impurity level goes straight through the roof, and then they have to do a really big ritual cleanup at the end of that process. So there's the daily cleanup, there's the annual cleansing, there's the always taking care of the fire. These things are going to sort of anchor the pattern of their days. And then there are all of the rites and rituals related to the public religion that are part of what they need to keep up with as well. Sometimes these relate to Vesta, sometimes these relate to other gods, but they're involved in something every sort of couple of weeks. So they have a real consistent calendar of involvement. Mm-hmm. And even when they're not directly involved in something, one of the other responsibilities that they have is to create something called mola salsa. Now, mola salsa is a mixture of spelt groats and salt, which they collect, grind up together, and turn into a fine powder. And this fine powder is a purification device prior to animal sacrifice.
Oh.
So
Would that be like Vesta specific sacrifice or like for all the gods? Or,
all
like,
the
everything?
gods.
Yeah. Okay.
So Vesta is involved in every divine sacrifice that happens at a public level in Rome because the mola salsa is always involved. So they make this about 3 times a year. You got to keep making it. Got to have supplies on hand. You wouldn't want to run short. So they're doing that. Different rituals happen throughout the year, which means that they get to collect some of that spelt, or somebody gives them salt, or they bring together different ingredients to help with the mixture and the binding. All of those things means that the Vestals are always sitting on a cache of mola salsa that they can share out as needed. Either a Vestal is at a public ritual and is doing the sprinkling herself, or there's some sort of sharing of that resource with the priests who are going to be doing that process. So Vesta is touching upon every public animal sacrifice that is happening. And the Romans do predominantly do animal sacrifice as part of their religious observance. Right. So there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, I'm picturing it based on Greek, which is like, yeah, every time. Like that's the main way that you would sacrifice to a god.
Yep.
And it makes sense. I mean, everything I process is in relation to Greek myths, so apologies. But like it makes sense too that like these goddesses of the hearth and of the fire would have that same association with all sacrifice because all sacrifice is still made over a fire. So it's in that same way where like the she's a goddess who is so like uniquely important because everything revolves around this fire. And so that's very interesting. And simultaneously, could you tell me how you're spelling that word? Because my brain wants to visualize it and I have no idea what you're saying.
So mola salsa is MOLA space salsa, as in like salsa dip.
As in, okay. So it's literally what it sounds like. Okay, great. I was like, is it your accent making a word sound like salsa? But no, it is. Great.
Yeah, you could think of it as the dance. Either works.
Yeah, either one. Great. Okay.
Do they do a little shimmy as they sprinkle it over an animal? Maybe.
That's okay. That's so interesting. So then, like, it was probably a pretty revered position. Like, this was like something that women wanted or girls wanted.
I'm not sure that necessarily it was wanted.
Yeah.
This is one of the questions that I struggle with in my research because part of what draws me to this subject is the fact that these candidates for Vestals are chosen prior to puberty. Mm-hmm. So they don't know what they're signing up for.
Yeah.
And by the time that they do hit puberty, they've already been told under no uncertain terms that losing their virginity is the worst thing that could possibly happen.
Right.
And so I don't know if people are clamoring to get in. Maybe they are. Maybe they're encouraged to. It is seen as a great honor, but we do also have moments of crisis for Vestal recruitment. And a particular example comes up under Augustus, where he's basically like, I'd put my daughter forward if she was eligible. What's wrong with you people? Because the situation politically for women and legally for women was changing under Augustus in ways that he didn't really quite like. But it wasn't seen as offering the same sorts of benefits to be a Vestal as it used to. Their advantages at a legal level had been somewhat eroded by the fact that other women had gained different kinds of privileges, but ones that meant that going into the Vestal Virgin priesthood was maybe not the best use of your daughter.
Yeah. Right. So then it's like it's parents putting their daughters up.
Yes.
For this role. Yeah. Well, and like, yeah, someone who's 6 to 10 has no idea what they're doing. So it's really.
Well, exactly. So, yes, ideally, the way that it's supposed to work is that a position becomes free because a Vestal has died of natural causes. The selection process is opened up to families. the Pontifex Maximus is looking for about 20 candidates to put themselves forward, and then they would be chosen by lot. So that's the ideal process. What we find as we go through Roman history is that if a family offers their daughter to be a Vestal, and that sort of obviates the need to have a selection process by lot, because it's like, okay, well, they're fine, they're suitable, they can go in.
Yeah.
Rather than getting 20 families to be like, what about my kid?
Yeah.
And then we have the issue under Augustus where people aren't putting forward their daughters. And he's like, well, tough biggies, we need some. And he starts to open up the selection process to families who aren't quite as elite.
Hmm. But it's still like volunteer, not from the girls necessarily, but from the parents, like rather than them going out and in requesting it or enforcing it or something.
Yeah, it's supposed to be something that's an honorable position, so you want to volunteer for it.
Right.
Essentially, that's the case. Some families are exempt if they have children who are placed into other priesthoods or are serving elsewhere. It's considered that it's not necessary for them to also offer their daughters.
Right.
Because going into priesthoods obviously have all of these restrictions on it, which means that your children aren't quite functioning as children in the way that you would like for inheritance purposes. So you don't want all of your kids to be priests. But apart from that, yeah, it's supposed to be quite a high honor.
It's so interesting to me how I never thought about it this way, but now it's so obvious, but like how much closer Roman religion is to like an organized religion of today than Greece, because I mean, like, also because like Greece wasn't even an organized country, let alone, like it was like all these different places that obviously had all these different ideas and thoughts, and like I'm sure that's true for like the wider Roman Empire, which was so vast, but at the same time it is this like organized structure in a way that I'm just not used to in my research and now am obsessed with, like this way that we can know all of this and have this whole process that's like recorded, and these it just even knowing about this process at all is so fascinating.
I think we need to give huge thanks to Ovid because
oh really
yes, and I would argue, and I know there are some scholars out there who agree with me, that Ovid is actually the most important source we have for the ancient world for Rome because of his Fasti.
Yeah, that's just what I was gonna guess. I've not read the whole thing, but I was like, I'm willing to bet it's in that thing.
It is not his advice on how to pick up women.
Weird, but it's so valuable.
Although that's fun.
Oh God, is it ever? Yeah, but the Fasti does. I mean, I've not read it, but like I know I've interacted with it in a number of ways, and I will always remember when I spoke with Elodie Harper about her books, the Wolf Den series, and she was like talking about how much how many like festivals and things we know about in detail because of the Fasti, and so it makes sense that the Vestals are in there too. Like, what kind of detail does he give?
He gives us lots of things related to significant events. So there is, I'm trying to remember whether he talks about the Forticidia. I think he might. There is this ritual moment that happens, which is horrifying. So a pregnant cow is sacrificed. And as the pregnant cow is sacrificed, the calf inside is removed. And the Vestal's role is to burn that calf as part of the Forticidia. And you're like, okay. So you're like, we think of the Vestals as like, tending to the flame, wandering around and cleansing things, creating some magic dust to sprinkle on sacrifices. But then there's also these times where they're highly involved in something that involves what feels like a very sort of disturbing ritual process where you're like, oh, okay, so
Yeah.
they get the baby calf and they get to burn the baby calf. Great, fantastic. So they're the kinds of details where you're like, what is Roman religion really?
Yes.
You're like,
That's
"Ooh."
horrifying.
There's a ritual involving that's just called the October horse, where the tail of the horse is cut off and the blood from that tail goes to the Vestals, and that's important for something they have to do later. So you're like, ew, okay.
The Romans were so wild.
The Romans are weird. The more you get into it, the more you're like, what is going on in this world?
I also love this following up me saying how like close they are to an organized religion, which is like true, but then also you hear the way it was organized and like these things involved, and it's like Jesus Christ.
You're like, with organization like this, who really needs a religion?
Yeah.
And so we know that we have a ritual calendar that goes through the whole year. Every Roman day is organized around whether you can do business or you can't do business based on what is happening at a ritual level with the gods. So there's that. Their whole calendar revolves around this kind of relationship with the gods. Is it working? Is it not? Then we have something like Ovid's Fasti, which gives us from January to June details about everything that is happening. So one of the things that is happening in June is the Vestalia. So that is at time of recording. That time has just passed.
Yeah.
But there is discussion of the stercus, which is ritual waste, pollution that needs to be removed from the Vestal Temple. And it has to be taken all the way down to the Tiber, which by any stretch of the imagination is about 1.2 kilometers, I think about a mile of walking to get from where the temple is in the forum to a point of the river, if you take the shortest route. And they have to get that stuff all through town, all the way down to the riverbank, and to get it into the river in order to fulfill the cleansing principle of this annual cleanse. Ovid
And
talks
like what
about
kind
this.
of waste are we talking? Do we know?
Well, this is
Like-
it. I mean, stercus usually means shit.
Okay, great.
And we're like, there can't be shit in the temple, can there? I'm like, who's shitting in the temple?
yeah.
So we don't know. We're a bit confused, but it's like the most disgusting of the disgusting. At least it's classified as such.
Lovely.
So, did they poop in the temple? We don't know.
Did they just expect that at least one person, like if this is when the public is being allowed into the
public's
temple too, they're
allowed
like,
in.
I don't know, like people are disgusting, like we'll
Yeah,
be ready
yeah.
for it.
It's my time to take a shit. And we're like, no.
I mean, the Romans were the same people who had a shared sponge, so like, would we put it past them?
Well, no. And look, they do what they do. Do I understand it? Not necessarily. Am I fascinated? Yes.
Absolutely. We love a public sponge.
And so the thing that I'm sad about is that we don't have the second volume of the Fasti, which would run from July to December.
Yeah.
Because that would be really, really helpful. There are some things where things like the October horse we get suggestions of, but it's like, I imagine Ovid would go into far more detail and help us out to really understand what might be going on there and why people are doing that. But we don't have it, so.
I didn't realize it was only half the year.
We're missing
there are,
a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say, there are a handful of things from the ancient world that we know we're missing and that I would give anything to read, so I shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, this is another one of those. Definitely. I'd be
I would
very
like this.
excited.
I would like Ovid's Medea, like just if we're talking Ovid specifically, those two would be great.
That would be fantastic. I must mention Agrippina's memoir. We always want that.
Yeah.
I want the words from her own mouth.
Ugh. I mean, I want a woman's words.
Yes.
I would
please.
like long form women's writing from the ancient world in literally any way. That would be great. But it's so interesting to know this much about these women specifically, even if it's not coming from them. But like, do we know about specific women? I imagine with this level of detail that we might have like specific examples of women who served or like anything relating to their words.
We definitely do. We do have examples of specific women, quite a few. The trouble with this is that usually Vestals that are named are coming into the evidence because something has gone wrong.
Ah.
So when we talk about what is going on with Vestals, we also have to talk about what happens when an accusation of incestum is leveled against them. And
Is that yeah.
incestum is pretty broad. It relates to things like immodesty, unchastity, an absence of virginity, but it covers a whole spectrum of things that are not just a loss of virginity, but are also related to what are considered chaste behaviors in the Roman mindset.
Right.
So we do get some early examples.
Good lady does.
Well, what's a good Vestal? A good Vestal is somebody who doesn't care about fashion and doesn't have a sense of humor. And how can we tell this? Because we have examples of Vestals going on trial for incestum for caring about their clothes and making cool jokes at parties.
Okay, examples, please.
If only I knew what the jokes were, but those aren't recorded.
Yeah, so we know they just told jokes, specifically?
Yeah, they were humorous in ways that were considered inappropriate. So
women can't be funny. That's true. Women are not funny. I'm sorry.
Yeah, how dare you? How dare you turn up and how dare you make jokes? But not just any jokes that we think are inappropriate. So it could be anything, really. This is a real shame that the jokes haven't been preserved for us.
Yeah.
But this is not necessarily a death sentence at that level. So the worst sentence that you can get for an incestum accusation is death.
Okay, so
women with a sense of humor tended to be let off with a lighter punishment and told to stop being funny. And women who were fashionable were told to dress with more modesty, please. Care less.
Yeah. Don't you know that makes for a slutty lady if she cares about her clothes?
Exactly. And, those sorts of... The punishment for that kind of thing is usually dealt with in-house. So the Pontifex Maximus will whip the Vestal.
Jesus fuck.
With a sheet in between them so they can't see each other.
Well, naturally. He can't see her body.
You wouldn't want to see her while you're whipping her.
Oh my God.
So were the Romans weird? Did they have fetishes? Probably.
I think 1,000%. Have you seen Priapus?
And it's like, what did you do today? I just whipped a Vestal through a sheet. Okay, cool.
She thought she was funny.
Yeah. She was dressing inappropriately. I could see her forearm.
Shoulder came out. It was horrifying.
I saw her ankle. It was a disaster.
The ankles make men want to fuck. That's facts.
It's pretty clear. Historically, the records suggest so.
Yeah. And that's our fault.
God.
Sorry. I really don't know how to talk about this shit without just being horribly dry and terrible.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's like if you don't laugh, you'll cry.
Exactly.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
So, every so often in my spare time, I like to look at my ankles and be like, would they break a man? Probably.
I have a shark on one of my ankles. That feels like I've made it even more dangerous, and I've not thought about it that way before.
Yeah, you've elevated the danger.
Yeah. He doesn't have teeth. It's not that scary.
Wow.
So, did they ever get kicked out, or would they get whipped, but then there's still a Vestal?
Well, you could get whipped and then you go back to doing your job.
Okay.
If you get kicked out, you get killed.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no way to get... Yeah, there's no middle ground. You don't get told to leave the Vestal Order and not come back, being like, you've been a naughty girl, go away, we'll pick somebody else. They're like, you've lost your virginity. The accusation, we've determined the accusation to have been true. You're guilty of incestum. You will be buried alive.
Jesus Christ. I've learned that Discord did not get silenced by my do not disturb. And I'm just hoping that stops because I don't know how to turn it off. What? So talk to me about the getting buried alive.
All right. Getting buried alive. What a time to be
The
alive.
Romans were fucked up. This is why I like other people coming on and telling me this. It's my favorite thing. I don't want to research them myself. I just want more experiences like this.
Every time something happens, you're like, what? No.
The Romans are fucked. It's every time I've got someone on here. It's like, okay, please tell me how the Romans were terrifying.
Look, I can. There's a whole process for this.
Great.
So, if a Vestal is accused of incestum, an investigation has to be opened up. That's the first thing. Now, whether she's found guilty of sort of a lower level charge of like having a sense of humor and she gets whipped, that's one thing. But if she is found guilty of the higher crime, which is losing her virginity, this means that she is no longer ritually pure to serve Vesta. And this is a big problem for the Romans. So, in the period of the investigation, she has to abstain from all ritual duties, just in case she is polluted in a way, and until they determine what the real answer is to that. A trial is held. It's not a public trial. It is held by the Pontifical College, and she is allowed to speak in her own defense, which is actually pretty rare for Roman women. This is one of the privileges of being a Vestal, is that she is allowed to speak in courts. So
Wow.
she could be brought into a public trial on account of something else, and she could be asked to speak, and that is acceptable because she's a Vestal virgin. If she is condemned as an outcome of that trial, so she is found guilty of having lost her virginity, she has to remove her ritual headdress, which is very distinctive. And when we see statues of Vestals from the imperial period, you can't mistake them for anybody else because they're wearing a very specific kind of braided updo thing with lots of layers. So she has to take that off. She's placed in a cart and carried through the city in a procession that is thought to mimic a funeral.
Jesus. Okay.
So everybody comes out for that. She is taken to a place called the Campus Scholari. Wait a minute. Latin. Me and Latin. I do Roman history. And then me and the Latin. Scleratus. The polluted field. It translates as polluted field.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It is technically inside the city. And it is near a place called the Colline Gate, which, if you were in Rome today, is near Termini Station.
Okay.
So cute.
Yeah.
So when I go to Rome,
Termini is a nightmare. So.
Termini is a nightmare, but a couple of streets back from that, you can find the approximate area where the Colline Gate is and the Campus Scleratus was, and you can be like, this is where they buried the Vestals.
Wow.
Now, they seem to have had a underground chamber that they reused, as far as we can tell. This underground chamber is in this polluted field. They open it up. They stick a ladder down. The Vestal has to go down into this chamber. They pull up the ladder. They shut the trapdoor. They put earth over the top.
Jeez.
The chamber is prepared ahead of time. So there is a bed down there. There is a lamp that is lit.
Oh my God.
And small portions of food. So a little bit of bread, a little bit of water, milk, and oil. And I don't know if they leave the skeletons of previous Vestals down there.
Oh my God.
I don't know. I'm not sure. We haven't done the investigative work to determine the answer to that. But the Vestal is placed into this chamber with what are called the necessities of life.
For like a week?
Well, yeah, because ultimately the Romans don't get to decide whether she's absolutely guilty of incestum. The gods have to decide.
Yeah, so it's the gods that kill her, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, if the gods wanted to save her, there's enough provision down there to give them time to figure that out. It's fine. So they cover up the entrance with dirt and they walk away. Done.
Holy shit.
They leave her to die.
I did not expect this to get that dark.
Yeah.
I mean, I should have because it's Rome. But like, buried alive is like a next level. That's in like, I don't even know. I don't have words. That's so fucked up.
It is. Very much so. Yeah.
And
so
they wrote this down. Like we know there was a bed. We know there was food.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. We've got sources that write about this. So Plutarch he writes about some of the details in this in his Life of Numa, because Numa is the second king of Rome and he's thought to establish a lot of the principles associated with the Vestals. But we also have a famous letter from Pliny the Younger where he talks about a Vestal trial that happens in his lifetime that he bears witness to under Domitian, where a Vestal, Cornelia, is found guilty of incestum. She persistently refuses the charge. She claims throughout the whole process that she's innocent. As she is being paraded through the streets to her funeral, she is protesting her innocence, and she also refuses aid as she's going down the ladder. One of the sort of public figures that is there sort of reaches out a hand to help support her, and she gives him the dirtiest look, like, do not touch my body. Because the other thing for Vestals is that on a ritual level, their body is supposed to be inviolable. So it shouldn't be possible for them to lose their virginity because nobody is allowed to touch them.
But women are still slutty, and they find a way.
They find a way. You know, where there's a will, there's a way.
I love those kinds of rules where it's like, no, the god made you pure and untouchable. But at the same time, if a man touches you, you will be killed.
It's such a double-edged sword. Like, how are you going to navigate this? You've got great power.
Oh my god.
So we have this great story from the Republican period of a Vestal, Claudia, who knows that her body is inviolable, as all Vestals do, but she uses it for political purposes, where one of her male relatives is denied a triumph and wants to celebrate it anyway, in denial of the Senate. And she stands with him in the triumphal cart. So he organizes it himself, goes against all senatorial rule, and nobody can stop this triumph from happening because they can't touch her. And I was like, this is incredible.
Okay, and a triumph is like basically just parading through the streets being like, I did something cool?
The triumph is the highest public honor that you can receive, or take in this case.
Yeah, exactly, because if you're doing it yourself, where it's like...
Yeah. I feel like it's a DIY job. You're supposed to receive the triumph from the Senate for military conquest. So military prowess of the highest order is rewarded with this triumphal procession through the city along a very specific route, culminating on the Capitoline Hill. And it's a huge parade. Everybody gets involved, and then there's lots of food afterwards. So everybody wants a triumph to happen.
Right.
But it has to have been earned. And the only people who can tell you that the triumph has been earned is the Senate, apparently. Unless you're a guy called Claudius, who's like, I am not suffering this indignity. I'm having my triumph anyway. What I did was great. And he asked very nicely for his Vestal Virgin relation to help him out. And she's like, sure, I'll stand in the cart. Why not? That'll be fun. So the Vestals could have these really powerful moments of using the privileges that they had to support their family, or they could have everything stripped off them in a moment through an accusation that may or may not have been true. And since we have no way to determine virginity one way or the other, but the Romans thought that they did, they could end up being buried alive instead.
Oh, it's so delightful to be a woman. You know, the patriarchy's just done great work for everyone involved. Absolutely working out for the best to this day, for sure. Like,
yeah, it's great. It's fine.
What? Do you ever just sit back? I mean, especially like I feel like it gets more and more true with every passing day of like the current world, but specifically also when you're existing in our world today and then also have this knowledge of the ancient world. Like, I swear I just get more and more angry every day because I'm learning about both, you know, like, and it's just so unhinged. Like, I feel like I live on a different planet sometimes because I mean, the evidence is such that it's not working for anyone except like 1% of people. And like, But yeah, no, still, like the capitalistic patriarchy is absolutely still the only option for
No,
society.
yeah, definitely.
Much like democracies that were never meant to include women or people of color or literally anyone else. Like, those are the only form of governance that we should be allowing. Did you have to fight for 100, 200, 300 years for your right in the democracy? It's still the only way that should have ever existed.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I think it's one of those things that being a historian really draws your attention to is how hard and how long women and other marginalized groups of people have fought and continue to fight for a basic minimum opportunity
Truly.
in a system that is structured against them at all times. And I think the thing that scares me is that when I demonstrate a passionate interest or frustration at something that is happening in the current situation in our world today, and not everybody, but, you know, it doesn't take many people to suggest that maybe I'm overreacting. And I was like, you do not understand history. Like, this is the first step in a series of steps that's going to lead us directly to a situation where we're going to have to fight for these things all over again. And it's like, it's steps backwards when we could have been taking steps forward. I see what is happening in the US and it appalls me because it emboldens those people in other places that want the same thing to happen. And so I was like, there's nothing worse than seeing it happen in really visible places. And so the fight is always happening on multiple fronts because it's not just enough to fight in the place where you live. You have to be cognizant of the fights that are happening in every context that are going to have an impact on yours, which is why the things that are happening in Gaza are terrible, why the things that are happening in Sudan are terrible, why the things that are happening in Afghanistan need to be fought against. And it's like, but all of these fights are happening simultaneously. And if we don't maintain an awareness and a capacity to critically engage with all of them, then when the fight arrives at your shore, you're not going to be ready. So, and as a woman, it just feels like you're always on high alert, being like, wait a minute, that's a problem. Like,
it just makes me think of all the, you know, bomb Iran for the women, like women's rights, bomb Iran. Like, you know, it's this idea that like, oh, it's okay to bomb a country because they treat women poorly. Oh, we're killing those women by bombing them. But it's okay because, you know, freedom. Like, what do you mean? Like, it just, it the way they, I'm losing my damn mind all the time. But specifically, the more, you know, it's like both so, it feels so good, it feels empowering, and simultaneously like I'm going to lose my mind in terms of like when, you know, researching the ancient world and seeing those things. Like, I just, the deeper I get into Greek mythology, the more I see the way that like everything is stacked against us, and it's just, in any case, I don't know how to think about anything else, but like these Vestals are, wow,
there's a lot going on, there's a lot happening. And thinking about Incestum for a moment, it does have this powerful effect on Vestal's lives in general. So it doesn't happen in every generation, but perhaps every 2 generations somebody gets buried alive. So it's always...
Oh, wow. I was waiting for you to say that like an Incestum charge, it comes every 2 generations, but straight up someone's buried alive every 2 generations.
Yeah, usually. Yeah. It doesn't take very much.
Hell.
So we don't get an Incestum trial throughout the late Republic, but we get into the first century of the imperial period.
So just Augustus comes in and fucks shit up.
Well, no. No. Well, I mean, he does some other stuff. Look, he doesn't bury any Vestals. So, like, good on him.
Great.
Still my favorite guy
all the laws
for that.
that he instigated. I've heard they're really good.
Yeah, they're great. They're great for women. You know, the morality legislation of Augustus. Yeah, it's a big win.
It's like all I know about it, so I know it's good.
It's not great. But we get to Domitian, and Domitian is kind of like, I'm going to bolster my reputation by burying a Vestal. It hasn't been
Wow.
done for a while. I'm
Oh
gonna
my God.
bring back live burial, and this is the way that Pliny positions it. So, do we trust Pliny? Maybe, maybe not. But this idea that there's a big ticket element to burying a Vestal, it does something for the public imagination. We get an alignment over time between the idea that Rome goes through periods of crisis and turns to burying a Vestal to solve it.
Oh my God.
So rather than it being something that's related to the Vestal's body, conveniently the Vestal's body is read as unvirginal because it's convenient for other situations that Rome is facing that are challenging. And they're like, what if we bury it a Vestal? Would that solve it?
Oh my God.
So those sorts of things start happening.
It's almost like they just don't want women to be people. They just want to convince us all that we're not human. Like,
but what are we instead? That's the thing that worries me. It's like,
superior.
how often do I have to open my mouth and say something intelligent? And like, for you to be like, oh, she's not a real human. I'm like, I spend my whole time being human. What am I supposed to do?
But yeah, I mean, the more I read, the more I'm just like, no, like the entirety of our society is built on the realization that we hold more inherent power as women, or as just like, people with a uterus. Like, we hold more power than them, and the second they learned Bronze Age Mediterranean, if we're like, I elsewhere, sure, but like I only know the Med, like the second they learned that, it became about devaluing and like dehumanizing women in every way, right? You just like see all the different like ticks of it. Like, I mean, I can see it in Greek mythology now, I can't unsee it, and I can see it in like every little story that exists. And then to hear this, where you have these women who were sacred in such a way and still so lacking in humanity to the men in power, like, it's wild. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised, but I somehow still am always.
They have, such a significant role in the ritual experience of Rome, and yet if the moment is right, they're completely expendable.
Yeah.
So we have a situation that crops up under everybody's favorite emperor, Caracalla, who was done such an injustice in Gladiator 2. I'm not even going to begin to go there.
Yeah, Jesus.
He's like the broest military guy that you've ever seen in charge of Rome. And under his watch, there is a trial of 4 Vestal virgins, 4 in Custom.
Oh my God.
And there's only 6 of them. So that's 2/3 of the order on trial for incestum. They're all found guilty as far as Caracalla is concerned, because he's the emperor. And by this stage, the emperor is also the Pontifex Maximus. So he gets to make the decisions.
Oh, right. Oh, God.
And this leads the Vestals who have been accused to try to figure out what they do. A couple of them do commit suicide, so they don't have to face live burial.
I mean, respect. What the fuck? Like, I mean, I think that that's probably more desirable to me. Jesus.
Yeah. So we have the case. This involves a Vestal called Clodia Laeta, Aurelia Severa, Pomponia Rufina, and Canutia Crescentia. So
I love that we have their names, though.
We have their names.
Really, that's really nice. We have their names.
We
It's
do.
sad that that's so like thrilling to me, because it's so rare in every other case.
It is super rare, and the reason why we have their names is because we have the record of Dio Cassius, and Dio Cassius is sometimes not considered the most reliable source, but he is actually a senator under Caracalla. So in this part of his history, he's relating events that he has directly witnessed, and he's like, this guy's bad news.
Yeah.
And he puts to death 4 of the Vestal virgins in one go.
And there were only 6, you've said, too, right? So
There's
4
only
out
6.
of 6?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So the substance of the story is that Caracalla has gone out and violated them himself to satisfy his lewd desires.
Oh my god.
So not only are they accused of incestum, but as far as the story goes, they are sexually assaulted by the emperor.
Fucking like
And then he turns around and is like, well, you're guilty of incestum.
yeah. Yeah, because it's the women who are at fault, right? It's the ankles. It's
Yeah.
it's always
Always.
it's always the women.
Show me your sandals. Ooh.
Like I just want to scream Diddy into this microphone right now, like, because it's only just occurred to me now, but like here we are, like it's just, oh my god, it's just never ending. It's just never ending. Like,
yeah. So one of them is buried alive, and to clarify, because I got the number wrong of how many were buried alive, 3 are buried alive.
Oh.
And Crescentia hurls herself from the top of a house in order to avoid the live burial.
Oh my god.
So, yeah. Shocking times in 3rd century Imperial Rome.
I mean, that's so utterly horrifying. And what's part of the horrifying nature is my brain immediately thought, like, were they buried together at least? Like, probably.
I assume so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as far as we're aware, there's just one chamber. I don't think they dig out a new chamber each time.
That's, yeah, I would assume. And also, like, they're you know, is this the only instance we have where more than one would have been subjected to it at a time? Like,
sadly not.
Oh my god, why is Rome? I'm so glad I have you to tell me this, but oh my god, why is
surely
Rome?
This is so terrible, it could have only happened once. No. There is another infamous case that involves 3 Vestal virgins, which comes from the late Republic, so about 114 BCE, where 3 are involved. So yeah, we do have a couple of instances of multiple trials.
Centuries.
Yep.
They were just doing this for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah, I mean, the Vestal Virgins, we think were in existence. If our written sources are illustrative of what we think is happening at an archaeological level, then the Vestals are in Rome doing things as a cult for about 1,000 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do we know? I want to hope that, like, the burying them alive wasn't around for 1,000 years, but I also don't want to give the Romans any credit. But like,
I wouldn't
not.
give the Romans any credit. Not on this.
Why are they like this?
It's the way the cult works. If they're not virgins, you have to bury them. Them's the rules.
I love how at the beginning I was like, so did they just get kicked out? And you're like, no. So they just get buried alive.
Yeah.
And one time there was 3, and then another time there was 4 almost.
Yeah. And then you've got to, like, select a whole bunch of new ones. And I can only imagine when you go out to the Roman families being like, we need 4 more Vestals. And everyone like, I'm not putting my kid up for that.
Yes. Are you
You're kidding me? Be like,
we know,
seems
like,
risky.
Yeah. Oh my god. Do we know how old some of these women were by the time this was happening? Like, were they... Oh, I don't... Why am I asking this?
Sadly not. No, we don't know.
That's probably for the best. I don't want to hear that they've got a 12-year-old under there for, like, it's... Oh my god, it's just so horrifying.
Yeah, no, we don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Are there any
even
nice
if I wanted
things?
To. Are there any nice things?
Are there any cool things?
Cool things. I think what's really nice is thinking about, what do the Vestals do when they're just hanging in their house? So right next door to the temple is the atrium of Vesta, which is the house of the Vestals. Which, if
they all live together in a house like Love Island style?
Yeah, so if they don't have anything else to do, if they're not busy with another ritual and they're not on duty in the temple itself,
no one's getting buried alive.
Yeah, they're hanging out at home. Aww. And hanging out together seems like that could be fun. I suppose if you get along with your fellow Vestals, that's great. If you have a little bit of issues with somebody's personality, you've got to deal with that for the whole of your life, because this is like a job you didn't sign up for and a job you can't get out of. So you've got to find a way to get along with people. But they also get invited to dinner parties and other social events. So they do have a social calendar as well. We do have records of them hanging out with magistrates and other priests in their downtime, you know, eating food, going to feasts together and stuff. That's where the jokes happen. Terribleness. But
thankfully, the jokes that don't get you buried alive, just a whipping.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a light whipping.
You've got to surf that edge, you know. Is this joke good enough? Will it get me whipped? I don't know. Let's see if it lands. And it's like, you know, looking around at the other Vestals at the dinner being like, I'm going to try it. Let's see what happens.
Honestly, half my podcast would just be like, just, you know, 50% of the time I'm funny. The other half, you know, I'm going to get whipped.
Yeah, sorry. It's just the way it goes.
Jesus.
So I could see Vestals having fun with that sort of thing. So they do get to have social lives. Even though they're ritually removed from their families, they continue to have connection with their family. That's pretty clear from things like the story of Claudia helping out one of her relatives with his triumph.
Yeah.
And we also have them sort of popping up in criminal trials to help out relatives because they're the only women who are allowed to speak. They're like, can you pop in and say a few words in my favor? And they're like, sure, I'm not busy today, whatever.
Now, and I do like to think about the like sisterhood that comes out of stuff like this. Again, when you just kind of like set aside the burying alive, which I don't think I'll ever get over. But like, yeah, they're I think about this a lot in the context of like women in say ancient Athens who were primarily not like able to go anywhere or really do anything. They were just like expected to kind of be just with other women, you know, weaving or whatever, tending to their fire. But like I imagine that in a world like that, you know, the stuff that was going on behind those closed doors amongst the women was probably like by and large pretty nice. And like I hope that they were at least able to, you know, share these things and like develop these kinds of relationships and lean on each other in what is otherwise like a pretty difficult, to put it like mildly, life, you know, like that's nice to think about as something.
Yeah, and I think that's probably where we can draw the most sense of positivity, because I can't imagine a space in which those women aren't truly bonded by the experiences that they've gone through together that are unique to them. Like nobody else would understand a Vestal like another Vestal. So the real struggles that they face, that they share, I think is something to hold on to. What that looked like, we don't know. We'd have to imagine it.
Women are good at bonding. Like I feel like, you know, that type of even now with, you know, I don't know. I just feel like I everything is on fire. But you know, having women both in my like real life, in my work life, in my internet life, it just even like on TikTok who are also complaining about terrible things, like that is so cathartic and so important that I just, especially with everything and with being my version of a historian, like is at least, you know, that's something really to hold on to and think about the ways that like I interact in that kind of sisterhood of just other women and trying to at least I have to imagine that in the ancient world. I have to think about all the things that they said and did amongst each other that we don't have evidence of, but absolutely was going on. The stories they told, all of that stuff. Like, you know, I hope that they're bitching about an emperor or, you know, like I hope there was a lot of gossip. I hope that they were really shit talking, you know, every dude available. Like that's at least that's a fun thing to imagine.
And I assume that must be the case because there's got to be a chance for release amongst all of the restriction that they're operating under. And I feel like the atrium where they share a living space together is their safe space because nobody's allowed to go in there either.
So it was just them.
Yeah,
that's nice. Not even the priest guys.
So they're allowed to have certain priest attendants, but it seems that the Vestals are in charge of whether those people are allowed in or out.
Oh, that's cool. That's nice.
Yeah.
And
Handy.
so they were selected by the Pontifex Maximus, but in terms of like existing as a Vestal, like was there a priest? Was there a male involved in the actual like the Vestal part, the temple, or all of their duties and things, or was it really just them primarily?
This seems to be the thing that we're less sure about, because it seems that there are times where the Vestals have support from lesser priests and priestly attendants who don't count as priests but are part of the things that go on.
Yeah.
But it's also that sort of thing where scholars have really been trying to parse what the evidence is telling us, because for the longest time across 20th century scholarship, in any case, the assumption was that women could not hold the sacrificial knife. So they could be present, but they weren't doing the thing.
No, women can't
No.
hold the tools of that sort.
No, not a lady.
Not with precious hands.
Exactly. She'll get her ankles dirty. We can't have that.
And everyone would come all over themselves.
It's too much. I can't handle it. So there is that kind of school of thought that persisted for a good long time. And we are all, as scholars, indebted to what happened as a result of the second and third waves of feminism that bled into ancient world scholarship, which is like, let's look at this evidence for what it's saying about women, not what it might imply about your assumptions about what women are capable of. And for instance, we know that the Vestal Virgins are involved in a ritual that takes place in early December called the Rites of the Bona Dea, the good goddess. It happens in the house of a male magistrate, but it is attended only by women. No boys allowed. The boys get kicked out for the night. They have to figure out what to do with their time. At the Bona Dea ritual, a female pig is sacrificed. It has to be done by somebody. There are only women there, and the only priests there are the Vestal Virgins. So who's holding the knife? Well, I think it must be a Vestal, surely. That would make the most sense. So we have that kind of moment as a standout. And the only reason why we know so much about the Bona Dea is because one year it gets violated and a man dresses up as a woman and sneaks in.
Okay, I'm really not trying to keep up with this idea that the Romans copied everything from the Greeks, but I was already going to say that sounds like the Thesmophoria, and then you said that, and I'm like, well, now it sounds like the play about the Thesmophoria.
It does. There are some parallels. There's some resonances. There's no doubt about that. It becomes a whole political situation, though, that Cicero ends up being involved with.
Oh, God.
So as far as we can tell, this is a pretty historical event because he complains a lot. And, is he making up some of this to get somebody into trouble? Maybe. Do we think a man snuck into the Bona Dea rites? Yes. Yes, we do. But nonetheless, he's not meant to be there. It's meant to be women only. There's definitely a sacrifice involved. It seems most reasonable to assume that the Vestals are leading that sacrifice because they're the most well-placed professionals to do so. So are Vestals holding the knife? Yes, they are. This can then extend to other moments where the Vestals are present and they're thought to be the most appropriate people to be in charge, but then the assumption is made that they don't actually do the thing. It's like, why would you get to the whole point of having these women be so qualified to do all of the things and then not let them do the things? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So the more that we get into what is happening with women as priests at Rome, the more we start to see how they're involved, because the Vestals are not the only priestesses that Rome has. They're just the most visible and significant college that we have evidence for. And
they sound like, and I say that without knowing enough about the rest of them, but they sound like also one that is so much more ritualized, so much more like strict and planned out, that they also, I mean, not to say like importance level I'm sure is relative, but it's interesting the way it does seem so structured, as compared to, I imagine a lot of the other priesthoods are much more loose in terms of, you know, who is joining or yeah, women being involved. Like, I know, I mean, there were priestesses in Greece too, where women weren't allowed to do much else, but you know, there wasn't that kind of like structure of the Vestals where we know so much about the selection and the age and all of those things. Like, it's wild how detailed it is.
Yeah, and we've definitely got a sense of there are other women who are involved in things like the Flamines, which is another category of Roman priest, and they come as a pair, a married duo. So it's a sacred marriage, and if one of them dies, they both have to be replaced.
Somebody's not getting buried alive, though, it sounds like, so that's nice.
No, you can have sex sometimes. It's okay. You're ritually married. In fact, sometimes you need to have sex for the gods. But other times you would have to abstain in the lead up to certain rites because that you've got to build up your sexual purity, that sort of thing. But that's a different scenario. And then we've got the sort of more publicly run cult processes where like the matrons will be in charge of certain things, and then the plebeian women will be in charge of certain things, and they're not considered priests all the time, but they're definitely engaging in ritual processes at certain moments. So there's a lot going on in Rome, but yeah, they've got a whole calendar. The Vestals have a very clear structure. They know what they're doing on any day of the week, and they've got their annual rotation that they need to get through, and everything connects into everything else. So for them, they're busy all of the time.
Yeah. Do we know, were there more, what am I saying? Were there, like, regionally, was it only in Rome, or like other major cities, would they have like their own Vestals, or was this like a specifically like city of Rome thing?
It feels like it's a very specific city of Rome thing, but it can't be at the same time.
Okay.
So the origin story of Rome comes through the idea that a Vestal of a place called Alba Longa is raped. And she's obviously not from Rome. She's from somewhere else. And the fact that she's been violated is the thing that produces Romulus and Remus. So she gives birth to twins as a result of that sexual assault. But she was supposed to be a Vestal, but a Vestal of another place. So we've got this idea, at least even within the Roman storytelling about their own origins, that the idea of Vesta being anchored to a place is specific to a lot of places. And how that works depends on where you are. So certainly it seems like it's embraced by the Latin people in general. And then we have this broader amorphous connection back to Hestia, which we're not really sure what to do with. Some ancient sources posit that there's an etymological connection in those names between Hestia and Vesta.
They sound more similar than a lot of the, you know, so-called, you know, Roman names.
Yeah, exactly. And so that sort of oral connection is there as well. Is this a merging of some indigenous Italic ideas with some Greek influence? These are the things that are very hard to trace, because we know that the Greek influence in Italy has been happening for centuries before Rome sort of pops up. So even when we have things that we think are sort of indigent Italic elements, by the time the Romans are writing it down, the Greek influence has been really clear and present for such a long time that it's really hard to discern the difference between the two.
Yeah, well, and especially with a goddess like that, where, you know, and I feel fairly confident because she does resemble the Greek Hestia so much in very interesting ways, where to me it's you know, reminding me of the broader ideas of like the matriarchy before, and the, you know, the way that goddesses were valued, if not equally, then like higher than the gods, you know, in the prehistoric kind of period. It would make sense if both regions end up with this goddess who is so tied to the fire, to the house, to the general like existence of, or like, you know, and sustenance of all those things that come with the hearth. Like, to have somebody who is so old that both cultures are trying to figure out what to do with her in their own way. Like, I mean, I think that's true for like so many of the gods, or whether they're coming from the East and into Greece or from Egypt or wherever, you know, like there are so many places so much older that then you would get, there's so much kind of lost in that period of like the Bronze Age and the early Iron Age and like the time when nobody was writing stuff down for us to figure out. Like, I mean, I just think about the Bronze Age goddess figurines constantly because I was just in Greece seeing like hundreds of them because there are just so many. And it's like, if this isn't indicative that like women were once valued at a higher or in a more, I can't even speak right now. I'm like, it's both getting late in my day and also I've just heard so much burying alive.
My apologies.
But, you know, it's so interesting to think about where those links could be coming in and where we'll probably never have any kind of concrete evidence. But like, it's interesting that this is the goddess that is so connected with Greece in the same way that they are both so lacking in what we expect from the other gods. Like, that's so interesting in itself.
Definitely. And this is one of the great mysteries of Vesta that keeps driving my interest, I think, because I'm partly fascinated by what is happening to the women who serve her. And it's like, how do they navigate this enforced virginity that they did not choose? It's not like becoming a Christian nun where it's like, this is a vocation and I'm choosing to serve. And I was like, that's fine. You like,
and you can be like 20. Like, you don't have to have never done anything. You just can't do it again.
Yeah. You could be like, you know what? Not for me. That's fine.
Yeah.
But for these young women coming into this cult to then have to grow up through the physical maturation and be like, oh, never. And it doesn't matter what your sexuality is. The idea that you are supposed to be untouchable in a ritual sense means that everything about physical intimacy is denied to you. Like, what is that like? And I wonder about that for these women. Being like, this is such a personal sacrifice that they did not know that they were getting themselves into. And the fact that Rome then goes on to attach so much connection and symbolic value between the maintenance of that virginity to, is the state going to survive? It is horrifying. So we have we have a little detail from Horace where he says, as long as there is a virgin standing next to the pontifices, Rome will last.
Oh my God.
This idea that is what it takes. That is the ultimate thing that will maintain the safety of Rome, is the maintenance of those Vestals in their virginity. And so this is why incestum is treated so seriously at Rome, or at least that's the nominal rationale, is that the state itself could be in danger. Rome itself could fail under the circumstances, that a virgin is no longer a virgin. And the big ticket item for that, which is why they have to watch that flame all the time, is that if the fire goes out, that's a sign that something is wrong.
Oh, right. We were putting a pin in that. Okay. So do we have evidence of like fires going out and then shit happening, or just this fear? Or like, also, I realize we will also try to wrap up soon. I hope you're not if you're in a rush, let me know. But can I ask that question if you have time?
You can ask that question. We have plenty of stories where the fire goes out, and that is the beginning of terribleness, because the fire going out is something that needs an investigation. So that starts the whole investigation. It's not a directed investigation in the beginning. It's not like an incestum trial where it's like, it starts, we're investigating this. They're like, why did the fire go out? What's happening? Did the wind blow the wrong way? Or is it the case that somebody has lost their virginity and Vesta is mad? So,
okay, so they still tied that to somebody's virginity.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Oh my God, of course. I mean, I don't know why I would assume otherwise. Every
time the fire goes out, it has to be investigated. Usually a Vestal will make the argument that nothing is wrong. We just got to relight this thing. There's a ritual process for that as well. And sometimes
Women have been speaking sense for a long time.
be like, just gotta turn it back on, guys. Don't worry about it. Sometimes stuff happens. So
Truly. Stars go out. What do you mean?
and it's like, what if we didn't tell them? I'm like, I wonder how often the fire went out and they just relit it and we're like,
Truly.
don't
Like I was
say
already
anything.
thinking about that before you said it was also investigated for that. Like, Jesus.
Like, just don't tell anybody. We'll just
put it back. Just relight it.
Yeah, it's going to be fine. I do wonder about that. But if it gets noticed, that's a problem and it does need to then be investigated. In some cases, they're able to relight the fire. And when that happens, sometimes that's okay and that's enough. And everyone's like, the fire's back on track. It's okay. We won't go any further with our investigations. At other times, though, it kicks off a whole sort of public witch hunt where the pontifices will put out a notice being like, if you know anything, if you've seen anything,
oh my God,
come forward with information. And usually a slave will come forward. Classic. To relate that they've seen their master getting it on with a Vestal. And that's terribleness. And they weren't ever going to say anything. But now that it's been mentioned, they thought maybe they should let somebody know about that. So often we see investigations into Ancestum then started through this gossip rumor mill process that has been sought by the pontifices.
Was there like a reward, or do we think like a master would also like tell their enslaved person to like go?
We don't,
like that just seems so interesting.
Yeah, we don't hear about a reward. It's mostly just punishment all the way down. So
right.
If they figure out that you had slept with a Vestal and that was the information that they had decided to believe, you were also punished.
Okay, great. So they did punish the man.
They did.
A little bit.
Yes.
He didn't get buried alive though, I bet. So
no, but it wasn't pleasant. He gets scourged with rods in public. So what that means is he's getting beaten up in front of everybody. And usually he's beaten until he dies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's not great.
Not
it's
ideal.
Not getting buried alive, but
no, it's not a nice way to go. You usually end up dead at the end of that process. It's very rare to survive the scourging, but it is done publicly. So it's humiliating and you're being put to death in front of a crowd. So the Romans, always subtle.
In cases where they'd actually done it, it's probably also sexual assault. So like, I don't know, beat him till he dies in public. But maybe that's just me. Maybe that's my current feels coming through. Sorry.
It's fair and appropriate, I think. Yeah, look, we're not sure. I can see a viable way of understanding some cases of Vestals losing their virginity because they were just like, I just want to know what it's like.
Yeah, no, that's not to suggest it's all, but like, given the punishment, I would imagine that like we could assume that at least 50-50 if that's happening,
Yeah. And so I think that's the other thing is that because they're held up in this really particular way as symbolic of this thing, that for some really grotesque men, that would be an incentive being like, I wonder,
Yeah.
And so horrifying as that thought is. So yeah, it's a great time in Rome. Nothing untoward happening here. The Vestals are very normal priesthood. Vesta, very normal goddess. It's all fine.
Well, to wrap up on a dumb and angry, I'm gonna call it a joke. I don't really think it is. That I just thought of when you were talking about the way that the like health of the state gets placed on these women and the fire and their virginity. It makes me think of how the quote unquote male loneliness epidemic is on women to fix. We have to be nicer to them, don't you know? Because the existence of men, their entire mental health is dependent on how women treat them. Just like how the entire empire of Rome depended on whether one woman was a virgin or not.
It's risky putting all your eggs into a single basket, isn't it? I mean, young men out there, work on yourselves.
Honestly,
that is
get
the
some
path
therapy
forward.
and you won't be so lonely. It's not about us. We just have developed standards that came with being allowed bank accounts. Jesus.
I mean, it seems so reasonable, and yet here we are. And it's like, it's
Well-
okay. It's all right. Don't change. Just be willing to be alone. It's okay to be alone.
Exactly.
And in fact,
that's
lots of people are choosing to do that without having any other problems. So,
honestly.
I mean, think about it. Maybe just
I'm
enjoy your life for what it is.
Truly. I'm happily single because the idea of living with a man is like a goddamn nightmare.
And look, I would agree with you. I have been very fortunate to fall in love with an excellent man, and but I didn't think that was going to happen to me. I'll put it out there. I did think
hear
for a
there
long
are
time I was
handful of
going
good ones.
to be a
Yeah.
spinster with cats forever, and you know,
Yeah.
and if it comes down to it, I mean, I've still got the cats.
There you go. That's what matters.
So, you know, it'll be fine.
No, I hear there are a handful of good ones. I'm just more and more I've not seen evidence, so I'm open to it. Anyway, this is not about modern men. It's about the crazy Romans. This was horrifying as it was delightful. Thank you.
You're most welcome. I can come and talk to you anytime about the horrors of ancient Rome, of which there are many. But this is
Honestly,
one
we
of the
do-
particular ones.
And wow. And like yeah. I should always expect that Rome is going to surprise me with its horrors, but somehow I always think I'm lulled into understanding the level of their depravity, and then somebody shows me it's deeper than I thought. But I mean, I'm sure I've said it in the introduction. I'll record separately too, but you know, we should have more of the partial historians on my show to tell me about Rome. So you and your co-host. But speaking of that, do you want to share with my listeners where they could find you and maybe the podcast I already named?
Ooh, yes.
Anything else?
So, I and Dr. Rad host a podcast called The Partial Historians, which is all about ancient Rome. And our main series is going year by year through Roman history.
I think that's so cool.
Look, I think we're in the running for longest running year by year Roman podcast at this point in time. We are currently in the 4th century BCE, which is considered the start of the Middle Republic.
I was going to say that's so early in Rome. I love this for you guys.
We've been podcasting for over a decade now. We're getting there slowly but surely. So you can find the Partial Historians on places like Instagram, places like Blue Sky, and I continue to run our Mastodon account because I still like Mastodon. But we're also on Facebook for old people, you know, welcome. We have a YouTube channel, and you can listen to us wherever you listen to exciting podcasts. Sometimes we talk about the reception of Rome in cinema. Sometimes we talk to special guests about areas of Rome that we don't know as much about because it's impossible to be an expert on everything. And we have a lot of fun along the way. We like to laugh. We have a good time. I'd say we're pretty solidly left as well. So
heck yeah. I mean, and to wrap that right in, like you're also part of the Memory Collective, which it will, I promise, be a thing that really exists more fully eventually soon. When I find more hours in the day. But I'm so glad to have you guys on with whatever the hell we're trying to do here. But I mean, I brought it up for the lefty thing because I'm like, I mean, if you weren't who you are, I wouldn't
be in there. Yeah. It's because you do the things you do the way you do them.
Yeah, and I love it. No, but I mean, you guys are always so fun to talk to, and this was fun, even though it was horrifying. And I think that says a lot about the way you talk about the Vestals. So
thank you. Well, it is always an absolute pleasure to sit down with you, Liv, because your passion for the ancient world is so present and shining through in everything that you do.
Oh God, thank you.
Yeah. It's like your vibe is bringing that enthusiasm to stuff, and I find that that's really inspiring for me and for what I do as well. And you know, always a pleasure. Absolutely.
I'm at a place where you could make me cry. No, but thank you a lot. Especially as I like, oh my God, I want to do so much with the collective, but I don't have the time. But I needed to hear that after. So thank you. Because like, I'm working on it. There's just so much and the world is on fire.
That's true. And, there's only so many hours in the day. And some of those have got to be sleeping hours.
That's exactly right.
So
Yeah.
important to restore yourself at the end of the struggle.
Truly, truly. We love sleep. Well, thank you again so much. This is me trying to wrap it up without it just the last word being sleep. But I'm also ready for that. No, but this has been so fun and also, oh my God, horrifying. So
welcome to ancient Rome.
Oh, thank you all so much for listening. As always, Jesus fucking Christ, the world's a goddamn mess, isn't it? I want to say so much about Gaza, but I also just want to cry all of the time. So, I don't even know what to say anymore. The UN even decided to finally say the truth out loud that Israel is committing a genocide against the Palestinian people, and so none of our countries have any excuse to let this go on any further, and yet they are. Israel has begun a ground invasion of Gaza, which is, let me remind you, a city that survived the Bronze Age collapse, but it won't. I won't say that. It's a city that survived the Bronze Age collapse, and I don't scream in the streets, call everyone. Free Palestine. Oh my God. Let's Talk About Myths, Baby is written and produced by me, Liv Albert. Michaela Pengowish is the Hermes to my Olympians, my incredible producer. The podcast is part of the Memory Collective Podcast Network, where you can also find The Partial Historians, which is the incredible podcast of Dr. G and Dr. Rad, these incredible Australian historian women. I don't know why I'm emphasizing that they're Australian. It's just delightful, and they're delightful. And they have such an amazing show about ancient Rome, and we all need more shows about places like ancient Rome that are created by women. So check them out, along with all the other shows. There's more coming soon, as soon as I am no longer drowning in Odysseus's bullshit. Thank you. I am Liv, and I love this shit.